Record.
Hello and welcome to this interview. My name is Lawrence Parnese. I'm from Megla Dental, and we've been teaching a lot of our dentists around the world. We work in 4 countries: Ireland, the UK, the US, and Canada. And we've been teaching a lot of our dental partners about Bitcoin and crypto, how to protect themselves, what's coming in the future, the very near future. And I'm interviewing today Dinny Collins from Dublin in Ireland. He is a very experienced Bitcoiner and person that knows quite a lot about crypto. He's been in it a good few years now. And he's going to here to tell his story about how he got involved in Bitcoin, how it's changed his life, how he thinks everybody should really learn about this and understand what Bitcoin really is and how it's going to change the world. So, Dinny, welcome. Glad to have you here on the 17th of May, 2022. And welcome.
Thanks.
So, share your story.
Thanks, Lawrence. Good to be here. So when you say share your story, how far back do you want to go? Like,
Let's go back. Let's start from a few years ago, because everybody likes to know how people got into learning about Bitcoin and why they really got into Bitcoin.
Sure. Well, I suppose my story of how I get into Bitcoin or why I get into Bitcoin, I have to go back and start at childhood. I grew up in, I suppose, what you'd call a poor Irish family where both parents worked and they worked super hard. And despite working super hard, my dad worked for himself, worked 6 days a week. They always had money struggles and never had enough money, and money was always a conversation within the family and a worry from my parents. And as a kid, you'd pick up on that. So my dream was always, I want to get rich so I can retire my parents. I want to get rich so I can buy dad a nice car. Because I know, he'd just be embarrassed going in when we're going to mass and he's a rusty old banger. Like, it'd be lovely if he had a nice car that he was proud of. And as a kid, that was my motivation. It's just, I want to get rich. Bitcoin wasn't invented then, but my motivation was to become an entrepreneur and to try and get rich. Well, it wasn't even to become an entrepreneur. It was just to work hard or do whatever you need to do to get rich. And so I decided I had a really strong work ethic, and I was like, well, I'm going to work really hard because I have to get rich. And I got a job and I worked really hard and I saved my money, and I'd done that for maybe 5 years. And I found I wasn't becoming rich at all. I was in the exact same situation that my parents were in. And although I was working really hard and I was saving money and I wasn't buying material things, I was trying to just save my money, I wasn't getting ahead, and I could see that I was just going down the exact same path that they were on. And then I suppose one of the best things that ever happened to me, ironically, I say, is I had a bad accident and I broke my back and I ended up in a hospital staring at the ceiling and getting a couple of surgeries on my spine. And what that done was it sort of took away how I was living my life before that, because the surgeon says, no, the job you're doing was steel work at the time. And the surgeons were like, you can't do steelwork anymore. Your spine is in bits. Lad, you're going to have a limp at best. You'll never run or anything like that again. You need to get a sitting down job, or you need to totally change your career. So that experience, eventually, I lay in the hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling going, please God, let my back just get better. Obviously, I didn't care about money or anything like that. All that goes out the window when you have a physical health problem. You realize what's really important. And from that journey, as I began to rehabilitate myself, I took ownership for the accident, and I took ownership for fixing myself. Initially, I didn't want to. I was just like, surgeons, go on. That surgery didn't work. Give me a new surgeon. You have a go. But then I realized I have to take responsibility because it's my body. I have to help heal it. And I went down the rabbit hole of fitness and health and understanding the human body deeper and deeper. And it accelerated my healing. And I really started to feel that I was getting stronger. My back was getting better. I wasn't in as much pain. And it's kind of funny. My measurement of pain was, okay, I was in pain constantly all day, every day. Bad pain sometimes. All right. But how I measured it was, if I could go for a walk one day and I walked one length of a short little bay, I used to walk on soft sand in the bay, and I was like, if the next day I can do 2 lengths, I've made serious progress. Because either way I'm in pain. I'm going to be in pain either way, but now I've done more work with my body. Instead of just 1 length, I've done 2. And originally this was walking up and down a swimming pool. If I was doing 6 lengths walking in a swimming pool, that was better because the last day I only done 4. So that was me seeing tiny little things of progress. And fast forward that over 2 years, I went from walking up and down a swim pool in the hydrotherapy swim pool with a float on me to completing an Ironman triathlon in about 2.5 years. So the progress, although day to day was really small, over a period of years, when I look back, I go, oh my God, look where I've come from. And that journey of fitness, it brought me to a point of going, all right, I feel amazing. I'm full of confidence, energy. My health is good. I have a self-belief. I have a motivation and energy. Why can't I just share and teach other people how to get fit? And that was when my idea came. All right, let's pivot from having a job to being an entrepreneur. Let's build a business and let's share this fitness that I've experienced and found with everyone and teach everyone. So I set up Dinny Collins Fitness 15 years ago, or maybe 13 years ago. And since then in North County Dublin, like, we've transformed thousands of lives of just going at fitness the same way I done it, with an approach of just progress, not perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if we're better than we were yesterday, you won't believe what you can actually do in a year. Like, I went to broken back to Ironman in 2 years, like. And I suppose I'm on a massive tangent, and but I'm coming back around to your question. I'm just trying to frame it. By starting my own business, I learned about investing, because starting a business is an investment. It's a huge investment. It's a really concentrated investment. You put all your eggs in one basket, and you manage that basket, and you work really, really hard to make the business a success. So by having Dinny Collins Fitness and experiencing that over 13 years, and having exposure to investment and how you can get, by investing into your business, you get better returns. And at the same time, I was still that young boy who wanted to retire my parents. So I've been reading books for 2 decades on how to become a millionaire. And I've been reading books from hedge fund managers like Ray Dalio, and all books on wealth creation. And I think it's the education starts to change my mindset. Like, books as simple as Rich Dad Poor Dad, it teaches you that poor people think a certain way, and I could recognize that in myself when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And wealthy people think a different way, and I could recognize that I needed to get the transition there. So that was my journey on to learn that I needed to become an investor. When I was looking at asset classes, I'd experience with digital assets like Bitcoin and crypto, and I had some friends who were trading them, early in 2015, 16, and then the 2017 crash that happened. It was like, oh yeah, well, I told you so. I'm sitting on the sidelines building my business. I'm looking in and going, what is it? How does it work? It's very complicated. I don't understand it. Needless to say, because I was studying money for so many years, I started to understand that gold is money. I'm holding in my hand a physical gold coin. I always love to bring this thing around and use it for explaining Bitcoin. Yeah. But gold is money, and it has been money for thousands of years. And I think because I'd understood gold so well, and I understood what makes gold valuable and why gold has had value for thousands of years and why gold is a true money, that when I did start to study Bitcoin, the transition was quite easy, because Bitcoin is just a digital version of a physical gold coin. It's just a digital version of a physical thing. And then the transition was quite easy then to understand Bitcoin, I think, from all the other work I'd done in the past about investing and understanding the fundamentals of gold. Now, that being said, obviously, I know, we've been in Bitcoin a couple of years, and every year you're learning more. I don't think anyone in the world understands Bitcoin fully yet, because we don't know how it's going to shape our world. Just like in 97, not many people could put their hand up and say, I understand the way the world's going to look because of the internet. Like, we thought the internet was a military thing. We didn't think it was going to shape our lives, and we're all going to spend almost as much time in the internet as we do in the physical world. So I think that's where we are with Bitcoin. There's a lot to learn, and it's sort of an exciting journey ahead.
Yeah, definitely a lot to learn, and it's moving so fast, and a lot of people don't understand how fast it is moving behind the scenes until you really start going in and watching, like, say, events like Bitcoin 2022, watching some of the seminars that have been on there. Yeah, it's gonna be an amazing journey, and it is, from what I can see anyway, it's gonna be like the internet in the future. Who would have thought 30 years ago that the internet was going to be as big as it's grown and it's become? Yeah, but we're just at the beginning of that whole stage, really. Something else that you mentioned there as well about mindset. A lot of people as well, I think, need to change their mindset and realize and be open to Bitcoin and be open to digital assets as well, because for a long time we've been holding like physical assets, and our mindsets taught us to, once you hold it in your hand, you have it. But the whole world's moving towards digital. Yeah. What's your take on that, about everything moving towards digital?
Yeah, like it's pretty obvious. One of the things I like to try and help people understand is, because people go about money, I have to be able to hold it in my hand. The euro is digital currency. 95% of euros that move in the world, possibly much more, maybe it's 99, are digital. So you can't hold your euros in your hand. And if you want to experiment with that, go into your bank tomorrow and say, give me my 100 grand there in cash, please. It doesn't exist. It's not there. They cannot actually physically give it to you. And that's just because that's a stumbling block with Bitcoin. And people are like, well, it's digital, and I can't hold it in my hand, so therefore, is it real? But it's like, well, everything in this world is nearly digital now. We've converted a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then regarding Bitcoin and your journey in it, when did you start yourself? And I know we can hear the dog barking there. What's his name?
Piston. I'm shouting at him now. Like,
okay. It's okay. Yeah, great. It's all part of the journey, isn't it? That's the thing about doing Zooms, isn't it? And doing recordings. You never know what's going to happen.
This is the Zoom life.
Yeah. So when did you start getting into it yourself? When was your first buy? What year was it?
My first buy in Bitcoin was in late 19. Okay. I only got serious. My claim to fame is, I think, that I got Bitcoin before Michael Saylor. But in early 2020, when we had the pandemic, there was a lot of time to study. And because I'd understood gold, and from 2008, we printed all the money, and then we seen the effect of that over the decade, I was like, they're doing it again. They're spinning up the money printer. What am I going to do with my wealth? Because my company has wealth, and I personally have wealth that I've accumulated over the last 20 years. So I was like, what am I going to do? Obviously, I didn't have 100% certainty, but on all the work I'd done, I was like, I'm pretty sure we're going to see inflation running hotter than it's ever ran before. And it's probably going to take, I don't know how long it's going to take. Are we going to see it during 2020? Or is it going to happen throughout the rest of the decade? But I don't want to wait until we see inflation, because then it's too late to move. So Crypto with Dinny, pretty much since our inception in about February, or maybe it was March 2020, we were talking about, lads, money printers are going crazy. We're all being paid to sit at home and do nothing. It's free money. We're arguing with the laws of reality here, because money is a store of energy. So you can't just create energy. Energy can only move forms. It can't just be created out of nowhere. So I made my bet. I was like, okay, my bet is I need to take a big position in Bitcoin. Of my savings, I need to use Bitcoin as my savings technology, because I see this as being my best hedge against inflation. And at the time, Bitcoin was trading, from 4,000 to 6,000 euros. It had crashed. And that's sort of like a funny story, because when you make an investment in any investment, whether it's starting a business or a financial asset investment, and I think it was Mark Yusko, or one of them billionaires I've heard saying this, you shouldn't be comfortable. If you're comfortable with your investment, you're probably going to lose money. And if you're really uncomfortable with your investment, you've done a lot of work on it, but you're still not comfortable, well, then it's probably a good investment. At the time, I was pretty uncomfortable with my investment, because Bitcoin was totally unproven. As early as early 2020, Bitcoin wasn't owned by PayPal. Bitcoin wasn't owned by any public companies. Bitcoin was still a money for drug dealers. And when I was talking about it on Facebook, it was like, why are you talking about that money that's only used for nefarious purposes, Danny? And I was like, well, no, I've done a pretty decent bit of work on this, and I think this is amazing savings technology. And unfortunately, there's a lot of newspaper clickbait headlines that sort of kept me out of Bitcoin for the first decade of its existence, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the same with a lot of people, because when I started hearing about Bitcoin years ago, a lot of my friends, it was around me for about a year and a half, but I didn't do the work. And my friends were buying it for between $75 and $100 at that stage. But I thought it was just a scam. It was too complicated. I didn't put the work into it myself. But hey, in 2020, I missed it in 2020 as well myself. When my brother told me to buy it for 6K, I didn't do the work. But then I started getting into it then in the end of 2020, 2021. And here we are
I
now.
think we all have the story like of, as I say, I had friends who were in it in 2015, in 2017. I was looking at it and went up, went down, and coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I think it's irrelevant because the fundamentals that made Bitcoin worth buying in 2015 are stronger today. Fundamentally, Bitcoin is a stronger asset today and a less risky time to purchase Bitcoin in 2022 than it was in 2020 and than it was in 2015. So people who bought it earlier took on much more risk. So when you answer that question, everyone wishes they bought Bitcoin earlier. So I say, well, there's never been the fundamentals are exactly the same over the next decade. They're stronger than that. Bitcoin is the best thing that we can buy today. So why don't you buy it is the question I'll always say to people. And another little cool thing is, because I think you're going to get to that later, the crash. People, we now have an opportunity to go back in time because Bitcoin is sort of where it was 2 years ago. Its price is rewound 2 years. So you can buy Bitcoin 2 years early by buying it today, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. But then again, a lot of people just don't understand it because they don't do the work on it. Yeah.
It takes a period of time, I think. For myself, my understanding of it has changed. And I've done a lot of work on it. Like I just studied 8 hours, 6 hours every single day, for maybe a year and a half. And even now today, I'll still study 2 hours a day, every single day. And some days I'll do more and like most people don't have the time to be able to put into that. So it does take a period of years to understand Bitcoin. My understanding of Bitcoin first was it was just a get rich quick. It was it's a way to spin up a few quid. Then I started to see it as digital gold, and that was before I understood it. That was before I owned it, and I just looked at it from a distance. It's get rich quick, whatever. I'm not smart enough to get rich quick by using it, so I won't use it. Then I understood gold, and it was like, oh my God, when I looked at it, I was like, this is just digital gold. It's got all the properties of gold. It's just a digital version. Then as my understanding developed, it's like, oh my God, this is actually digital property. This is property in the digital world. We've never had a means of having peer-to-peer property rights in the digital world. Then it was like, oh my God, the next layer is, oh my God, this is a transition from physical store of value, like property, like buying stocks, like buying bonds, like buying gold, to physical store of value. And store of value, like every human on the planet, we need food, we need shelter, and we need the ability to store value. That's why Bitcoin is big. That's why Bitcoin is bigger than anyone who's new to it doesn't realize, and how big this thing has the potential to be. And perhaps over the next period of decades, we see a huge shift, and this innovates the world just like the internet did. It causes big a movement. It's not just I'm going to have this app on my phone, I'm going to have these Bitcoins in it. It'll change how humans act and how our world is shaped, I believe. It has the potential to.
Yeah, definitely. So that's kind of the way I see it as well. And when you do your work, you will see it differently to when you first started, or when you heard all the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt from your friend that never done the work, from your granny that doesn't even know about it, from your mother or your father or your brother that doesn't know about it. When you really start doing the work and you really get it, when you really get what Bitcoin is and how it is going to change the world, I think you'll always be short. And you'll never think you'll have enough because you'll understand the future and what it's going to do in the future. So moving on then to my next question. What do you think about the super inflation that's happening here in Ireland? And actually, it's happening all over the world and the Eurozone. And how did it actually happen? Like, a lot of people are looking at things that we're seeing in the news and the papers. Some of them may have contributed to it, but what's your take on it?
Inflation is a direct result of printing money. It's very simple, I think. If you inflate a currency's supply, you dilute the value of the existing currency within the system. So therefore, let's just say a gold miner is the enemy of anyone who holds gold. because that's like a money printer. By them mining more gold, they're bringing in more gold. If they turned off gold mining and it became illegal to mine physical gold, well, my gold coin is just going to go up in value forever because it's been priced against a euro, and euros are created. There's always more of them. Okay, so a money printer is the enemy of anyone who owns money. If you own euros, the money printer is your enemy, because for every euro that's printed, that devalues any euro that you hold. And it's the same with any currency. And we've seen over my lifetime that everything has gone up in price. And the problem with inflation is it's a slow death. It's like you're bleeding to death. I describe it to people. In Crypto with Dinny, we help people build a plan so they can retire early. I teach people, this is the mistake I made. For the first half of my life, I was at the tap with a bucket trying to fill it full of water. And when the bucket is full of water, that's financial freedom. You have enough money to live forever, happy days. But the problem is, in our existing financial system, there's a massive hole in the bottom of the bucket. So you're trying to fill the bucket full of water, and the water is just draining out of it constantly. So you can never actually reach this horizon of financial freedom. It's just impossible for anyone to get to. Now we see it more so in asset inflation, like assets have hyperinflated. Property in Ireland is definitely gone up more than the CPI number of whatever inflation in Ireland is meant to be, 5%. Property is up 20-30% in 1 year. And we see it in the cost of, if you want to use electricity. My electricity bill has gone up twice. It's doubled twice. How many 100% is that of an increase? 200? It's insane. Yeah. Petrol, if you want to put petrol in your car, like that must be up 50% or something. It's got to be like, so assets and commodities are hyperinflating. Okay. And when you ask yourself the question of why is this happening? Like for me, my journey into gold, how did I get into gold? Well, I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I was a teenager, mid-teens, maybe a little bit later, I'm not sure exactly. But I said to him, Dad, your house cost you 20,000 pounds, euros. And now I want to buy a house and they're 100,000. How come houses are 100,000 now and you only have to pay 20,000 for it? And like when you actually analyze that question, in theory, using common sense rationale, okay, which is I think what's missing from our world.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't talking common sense anymore.
Houses should be 30 years later, they should be 10 grand to build a house because the technology is better. Okay, we have machinery to do it faster. All right, everything is innovated and became better faster, yet it costs 5 times more. And that was years ago. Now that same house is 500,000. So my dad paid 20, but if a kid wants to buy a house today in their 30s, they need 500,000. How did we get there? What happened? We used a money printer. That's the only thing that got us there is we used the money printer, and under the illusion of inflation is good. That was a narrative that's peddled and still peddled, that inflation is good. Inflation is necessary to get people to spend their money. And I'd again use common sense rationale and go, no, inflation's not good. Because if you break that down, you're saying the threat of stealing someone's money if they don't spend it makes them spend their money. And you're like, well, yes, of course it does. If someone's going to rob my money unless I spend it, I'm probably going to spend it. But does the economy need that? What that creates is the world we see today, a consumer economy of people who are obsessed with, the next shiny object, instant gratification, not providing for their future. Look around at the health of our nation, of our world, of the Western world. Everyone is obsessed in it. No, well, I'll just eat the cake. Why should I be healthy for the future? It's all this short-term thinking. And it's all came about, in my opinion, just from fiat money and this whole narrative of getting humans, instead of thinking of your future, you want to focus on the now. I want it now instead of, no, I'll provide for my future, I'll save. Like, we can't save anymore. As I said to you, the most important thing that humans need is food, shelter, and an ability to store value. That means to save for our future. There's no ability to save right now unless you become a sophisticated investor. So you have to be a dentist and a sophisticated investor just to keep your money, or you have to be whatever your profession is, a doctor and a sophisticated investor, a metal fabricator and a sophisticated investor, because you can't just go and do your trade and put your money in the bank and expect it's going to be there. Okay,
Yeah.
100 years ago, you could go do your work, whatever your work was. You got your gold coin, you kept it safe, and you knew that was going to be there. In 20 years, that will still buy me the same stuff. Okay, but today you can't do that. You do your work today and you put it in the bank for 10 years. At the current inflation levels, you lose half your wealth in 9 years.
Yeah.
Your time is being diluted, and your time is the most precious, important thing we have. It's finite. Time and Bitcoin are the only two things on this planet that are actually finite. And that's why it's a huge problem. The fact that humans don't have an ability to save anymore. And Bitcoin is a solution to that because, as I said, we have three needs. And one of them needs has been taken away. And that's why we see the world as it is. You know, and you can see it, there's more anger in the world, more frustration, more hate, and more short-term thinking. And it's all happened since this 50-year experiment, since we went off a gold standard in the 70s and onto the fiat money, which is just money that it's basically a Ponzi scheme, you know, because it relies on money to be printed. You've got the Federal Reserve doing their meetings, and the meeting is like, how much money will we print?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
They
and
sit around a table and they just come up with these figures, don't they? They might be calculated figures, but they sit around, you know what I mean? And they talk about it to say how they're gonna keep on propping up the whole economy of the Fed or the Eurozone or the sterling. They all do it.
The problem with it is that it affects the actions that those people take will not affect them. It will not affect their kids. It will not affect their families or their relatives whatsoever, or even their circle of friends. The money printer affects the poor and middle class. What the money printer does is it moves money from the poor and middle class to the wealthy. Okay, and we've seen that over 2020. We've seen the largest wealth distribution ever because the poor and middle class have had all their savings stolen through inflation, and wealthy people, or people who understand the game, they own assets, and all we've seen is our assets pump. And in 2020, I have a business going through carnage. But for me as an investor, I had my best year of investing of my life because all my assets hyperinflated, and I did nothing, only understand the system. And instead of owning currency, I owned assets. Okay, and that's why it's a problem, because it's moving money from the most vulnerable part of society, the people who need their money the most, the people who don't understand the sophistication of this game that we're in of fiat money, and they just want to do their job, get their money, and have a good life and time with their family, which is all any of us sort of want. But unless you understand the game, you can't do that because your wealth gets stolen. And right now, everyone who doesn't understand that is poorer because the cost of petrol, the cost of electricity, and the cost of buying a house and every other asset and commodity is more expensive. But your wages haven't gone up the same degree. So you're net poorer.
Yeah, yeah. And getting back to that point as well, like in the news and in the media, they're telling us that it's like 7, 8, 6, 7, 8%. But we can see when we go to the petrol pump or even the electricity costs. I think in Ireland on the 1st of May, we were all notified that electricity going up by, I think, 21 or 23% in May. In January, it went up about 30%. So how does that correlate? Like, how are they saying these things on one side, and then we can see it when we purchase things? Like, what's your take on that?
The way you measure inflation is really, really difficult because inflation is really subjective. Every person has a different inflation depending on what you want to own or buy. Therefore, you can rig the inflation numbers to make it seem like this isn't as bad as it actually is. And that's what we see with how they come up with these figures. Is that they're able to handpick what they want to decide. And for instance, like you can go, when you're taking the numbers of it, you can be like, well, people used to buy steak, so they're buying meat. But then when the price of steak gets higher and I can't afford meat, now I have to buy less quality meat, okay? Or I have to buy, you know, I have to substitute it for chicken because chicken is cheaper.
Mincemeat. You buy from mincemeat. Instead of buying
So
steak, you buy mincemeat now. But
I'm
it's still meat.
I'm losing the quality of what I can afford, or I'm net poorer because rather than eating steak, I'm now eating mince meat. But the way inflation is calculated is the exact same. Dinny's still spending a tenner a week on his meat, the same inflation. So it's just a way of disguising it. And it's unfortunate, but like, again, if you just use your own common sense, okay, and fast forward and just think of first principles is what I always do. As I asked my dad about his house, in this day and age, with all the technology that we're holding in our hand, okay, like I can run a podcast for about 2 hours work a week, and I could do it off the smartphone. Okay, 10 years ago, I'd have had to have 2 people working for me, and we'd had to be all working 40 hours a week to run a podcast. Okay, so look at the time I've gotten back. Look at everything in life, how much technology has made things easier and better, and how much more efficient, how much tasks we can get done now in our time. Okay, therefore, with that thinking, we should be only working about 3 hours a week now and still earning the same money, because look at our productivity has gone through the roof. Our personal human capital, our productivity has grown exponentially, but our freedom hasn't. The amount of wealth we can generate and therefore do less work hasn't. People work harder today. It used to be, when my granddad had a business, he worked, and, my granny didn't work, and my mom and my uncle stayed a good life, and that was fine. And then in my parents' generation, it was like both my parents worked, and they worked a bit harder, and we had a good enough life. Today's day and age, you got to get some kids, and you got to get them working, and you still can't even afford a house. So what we're seeing now is people can't even get out of their parents' house. And it's like, how is this? Like, look how much we're getting more productive, but this fiat system is stealing the energy. Our money is just diluted so much, and the energy, because we're exchanging our time for money. And I put on my Instagram story yesterday, it says like €1 today is worth less tomorrow. And that's the irony, okay? That all the money that you earn today, tomorrow it's worth less. So the time that you put into earning that money has been diluted or stolen from you, all right? When we had the gold standard, your gold was worth the same tomorrow as it's worth today. So you could decide, I'm going to work hard for 10 years, then I'm going to take 10 years off. Or I'm going to work really hard for 10 years, and I'm going to take the rest of my life off. I'm going to work four times harder than other people so I can retire in 10 years, and therefore I'll have 30 years and I'll just live off my money. And you knew that money was going to be there, and that money was going to have value, because the value of it was a constant. But we don't have that with our euro. We've no ability to save.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Some great points there. So with yourself, regarding inflation, how it happened, it's through the printing of money. How much has it increased since over the years? Like in 2008, they were printing so much percent of the currency. And what are we at now? What are we at 2020? What did we print in 2021? Have you got any of those figures? So you can.
No, I'm a generalist. I don't split hairs or have the mental capacity to remember figures. Okay, we printed trillions since 2020. The US dollar is up 40% maybe in the last 2 years. That means effectively almost half of the value of it has just been diluted.
Yeah.
Okay, the effects of inflation aren't instant. That's why in 2020, when I thought I have to move now and quick, and then I was like, all right, nothing's really happening, because we only seen inflation getting talked about in the last maybe 5 months in Ireland.
Yeah. So
it takes time, and the same is true, that it's not going to go away really quickly either. The problem with inflation is, so as I said, I enjoy reading books. I read a book on how to become a millionaire, and it was really simple. It was just like use compound interest and start in your 20s, and you'll be a millionaire by, I can't remember, 45 or something. And it was using compound interest. And Einstein calls compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. Inflation is like the opposite of compound interest. Okay, it's the polar opposite of it. So the fact that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, and it will enrich anyone who uses it, and it's so powerful, well, inflation is the opposite. It's not just inflation 7% this year. Okay, so of my 100 grand, I've lost 7. All right, yeah, well, sure, I still have 93 left or whatever. Okay, because it grows exponentially. The next year, you're compounding on 93 grand.
Yeah.
So it destroys wealth exponentially, just like compound interest creates wealth exponentially. So that's why it's something I pay attention to. I think it's something that I've been passionate about, trying to teach people the basics of just learn a little bit about this and take responsibility, some of your own money. Don't always give your money away to financial advisor, to scammers, to whatever. learn a little bit about hard assets. Like anyone can buy Bitcoin, anyone can buy gold. It's not that hard, but you're just understanding how to protect your purchasing power, how to keep what you've given your time for. You know, because you've exchanged your time for that money. You want to keep it. We all do.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, the model we're using at the moment is we use the stock market as our ability to save. All right. But that's different than saving money. Saving money, you're just saving in physics, like saving in the stock market, you're trusting humans. You're trusting the assets.
Trusting somebody else as well to manage that as well for you, manage that asset for you as well.
Yeah, well, you're buying a company and you're hoping that the company's going to be here in 10 years. You're using a company to save. That means you have to rely on the actions. What is it? Like, how many actions does Apple make a year? A trillion little decisions, a quadrillion decisions for all them to be right. You know, it's very different than just trusting in this yoke.
Yeah.
It's just a shiny rock that humans can't change, and it's just scarce and difficult to find, and that's why it's a good store of value.
Yeah. And then, so with that being said, what's your take on how people can protect themselves, you know, from inflation and all these rising costs, you know?
Yeah, like, I try to make it really simple. There's loads of ways to protect yourself, and you can go into all sorts of different asset classes, but you don't want to just confuse people and show off how clever you think you are and really give people no value. If someone is clueless and starting today and how you can protect yourself, well, one, you can make sure you're sovereign, that you're living below your means, okay? And you're not living above your means, and that you are able to ride through any bad times. You know, so don't wait until you're in a recession to start trying to sell stuff, because you won't be able to sell anything when you're in a recession. You know, lighten the load early, if that makes sense, and prepare for it. So you're in a position to ride it out. The next thing, I suppose, is the simplest way that I've found to protect and generate wealth, not financial advice, is to buy Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bitcoin is this new technology, it's the digital gold. All of the world needs it. Everyone on the planet needs an ability to save, okay? But only about 1% of the world understands it. Therein lies the advantage. Because when you buy Bitcoin, it's not like buying gold. You're buying a share of all of the gold ever to be mined, ever in the future. Because with this technology, you're not only able to own the asset, and the asset is valuable, you're able to own the network. What is Facebook? It's a network.
Yeah.
All these massive companies now that own the world, they're just networks. So the power of network is enormous. And the power of network, like Facebook's network, is worth more than the fact that I can just post a picture on it, that it's an app that I can post a picture. That's not what the value is in Facebook. It's the value in the network, that everyone uses it and they have this network. Same with YouTube, same with all these big social media companies. It's their network. Google's network is what makes it valuable. And with Bitcoin, 1% of the world understands it, 99% needs it, and you can buy the network. And you'll own that network, while the other 99, slowly but surely over the next period of years, start to figure it out one by one, person by person. But it's inevitability that they will figure it out, because humans will always move towards a money that's sounder. Okay, a sounder money will come from a bottoms up approach as opposed to top down, and Bitcoin is sound money.
Yeah, definitely. And we can see that as well with even countries. Like, there's something happening right now as we speak, which is going to be, like, I think it's going to be massive for the whole world. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. About 44 countries coming together in El Salvador to discuss about Bitcoin with their central banks and their financial advisors as well. You know, a lot of people don't know this is going on, but this is going to be massive. You know, and if some of these countries after this week get involved in this, which they probably will, it's going to build a network again and bring more people into the network. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on a little bit. Okay, we hear about all these horror stories in the crypto industry, and something happened there last week. There was a big crash in the crypto industry. Can you tell me your take on that and how you see how it played out or what happened?
When you look at crypto and Bitcoin, I always try and separate the two, and I treat Bitcoin very different. Bitcoin, is sound money, and crypto is like venture capital. It's innovation. It's a testing ground. Now, so that being said, what you're talking about is the price of Bitcoin corrected last week. I think it might have dropped like all in all 10 grand. For me, my understanding of that is, well, that's fantastic, because what happened was there was an altcoin and they had bought Bitcoin to put it on their reserves, and then as their altcoin was crashing, they were selling Bitcoin into the market to try and save it. And that's fine and grand and dandy. But the long and short of it, as my understanding is, okay, crypto is high risk stuff. Buying Bitcoin is very low risk. Buying Bitcoin, you're just buying something that's programmed to go up in value over time. It's sort of like this. It's just shiny and yellow, and it can't be destroyed, and that's all it does. And it's scarce, and that's it. That's all it does. Very simple properties it has, and no one can change them. That's what makes it be valuable, gold. Well, Bitcoin is pretty much the same. It's pretty simple. Like, it's scarce. There's 21 million. That's all there ever is. It's an immutable decentralized ledger, just meaning no one can change it. Decentralized meaning no one can turn it off or get rid of it. So inherently, it's pretty simple. And therefore, the fact that the crypto industry caused Bitcoin to correct and crash is a gift for people who want to accumulate Bitcoin, who do a little bit of work on it and go, all right, this is digital property. This is like a CD is to Spotify, okay? And a gold coin is to Bitcoin. It's just a digital version of a physical product. So I want to accumulate it. Well, if I truly want to accumulate it, Bitcoin again teaches you to think of your future, not of tomorrow. If you're going to choose to own Bitcoin, I always teach people, like, you've got to hold that thing for 4 years. When you're buying it, you want to be able to say, I'm comfortable to save that money for 4 years. And if you're not comfortable to leave that money for 4 years, well, you're investing too much. If you're like, oh, well, if the clutch goes in my car, I'll have to sell some Bitcoin. It's like, no. You're not separating your living expenses from your investable capital. That's the basics of how you become an investor. You have to separate the two, because you got to let your investments do their work. Leave them do their thing. So it's a gift. The recent crash is a gift to anyone who wants to accumulate Bitcoin, because, as I said earlier, we're able to rewind time. We're able to go back 2 years to where the price of Bitcoin was. And everyone wishes they bought Bitcoin earlier, and now you have the ability to go, well, I'm going back in time, and I can now buy Bitcoin at prices it was 2 years ago. What a gift to me. And that's where the short-term thinkers differ, and they'll hate Bitcoin crashes, and you'll get the I told you so, Bitcoin crashed. But I've been investing into Bitcoin now for a period of time where I've seen multiple crashes. I've seen Bitcoin that I bought at 12 grand crash to just over 6 grand. And I've seen Bitcoin I bought at 14 grand crash to 7 grand. I've seen Bitcoin I bought at 16 grand crash back to 12 grand. I've seen Bitcoin that I bought at 20 grand crash to 16. And on and on and on. And I've seen it crash from 60 grand to 20 grand. Okay? But it doesn't really matter, because I'm accumulating Bitcoin as a pension plan, because I see the future of it. I see that more people are going to want to own this thing. 1% of the world owns it. 99% need it. There's going to be volatility. Another crypto asset can cause Bitcoin to go down. That's not a catastrophe for me. That's a gift and an opportunity, because my only goal over the next period of years is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as I can for my future. Therefore, when Bitcoin crashes, I'm happy. When Bitcoin goes down, I'm happy. When Bitcoin's pumping, I get less Bitcoin for my euro. Okay? Because I'm playing the long game, as most people should. If you're going to choose to own Bitcoin, you love the crashes, you love the corrections, you love the bear markets. And the work that you do in the boring times is rewarded in the bull market times. Just like Bitcoin's bull market didn't start until end of 2020 and into 2021, where we had the tear. But all the work that I've been doing of just accumulating my Bitcoin every week throughout the boring times when there was no good news and Bitcoin was just going up a bit and down a bit, then you get rewarded when the next bull market comes. Every 4 years, the supply of Bitcoin is cut in half, and it causes this bull run because it has to be repriced. The asset's twice as scarce, so the value changes, so it has to get repriced. So the work you do in the boring times, and sorry, I'm on a bit of a rant here, but the latest crash, I view that as opportunity. I view it as a gift.
Yeah. No, true, very true, true. And something that I say as well, like knowledge is power. So if you start learning about this and you really understand it, the more knowledge you have, the more you can use that knowledge to put in your book for the future, and you'll understand it more. So knowledge is power, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Lawrence, like if you're owning something and then it's gone down in value, like clearly you need a bit of knowledge. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to buy something that you're like, well, it might be worth less tomorrow.
Yeah,
But you can, if you need the knowledge to understand the long game of, well, it might go down tomorrow because there's short-term speculators and there's traders and there's hedge funds and there's all these games going on, but I'm not getting involved in that. I'm just accumulating. Every week I just buy my few sats. Every week I just buy them and keep them, buy them and keep them. And I let all those games go on the sidelines because none of that stuff matters. Okay? Bitcoin crashed 10 grand, but the question is, did it lose its immutability? No. Did it lose its fixed money supply? No. Did the code break or was hacked? No. Is it the price might be 10 grand cheaper, but has the value changed? No. It's still way undervalued. This thing is worth 1 million. In fact, it's probably worth 10 million when most of the world starts to understand it. And then it'll be worth 50 million when all of the world understands it. So whatever price we're at, it's way undervalued.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just going to take a period of time. And it could be decades. But it's not going to get there immediately. It's going to be a jagged line of volatility going up. But every 4 years, Bitcoin has a new higher high. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's something that I didn't understand as well a few years ago. And the difference between price and value. There's a big difference. And once you get that and you understand it, like paying 50 or 60K for a Bitcoin, now we understand the value of what it's going to be worth in the future in 5, 10 years, 20 years down the line, down the road, you know. So we'll move on a little bit. We touched on a little bit about the meeting that's happening this week, or it started yesterday in El Salvador. So can you tell our viewers a little bit about this? What's happening? Why these 44 countries and their central banks and their financial institutions are meeting in El Salvador, and why El Salvador?
Yeah, there hasn't been a huge amount of information yet about how it's gone, etc. But it's very simple. Again, it's just like I always try and just make stuff. I call it Dinny science. So it's just like really simple. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. The consequence of doing that is the Bitcoin industry rallied around them. It became a tourist destination for anyone who owns Bitcoin. Now, most people who own Bitcoin are wealthy. Some of them are very wealthy. If you bring wealthy people into your country, the GDP of your country starts to improve. Therefore, the living conditions, the wealth of your whole country improves. So El Salvador, since they brought in Bitcoin as legal tender, they've seen their GDP, they've seen their tourism explode. And other poorer or developing nations are looking at them and going, that seems to be working for you lads. Will you tell us what you've done? And Bitcoin incentivizes people to help people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, that's why I'm passionate about teaching Bitcoin, because yes, it'll make people wealthy. Yes, we build retirement plans around it. But I think it's going to change the world and give everyone equal opportunity, because everyone's got a mobile phone pretty much in the world, and internet saturation is pretty much worldwide. But half of the adult population on this planet are unbanked and can't get basic financial services. Bitcoin fixes that instantly. It fixed it in El Salvador. In 40 years, the IMF banked 30% of the El Salvadorian population. And in 4 months, Bitcoin banked another 30%. So it done in 4 months what it took our regular system 40 years to do. That's incredible. That's the power of this thing. So that's why I'm passionate about sharing it and playing my part to help Bitcoin's understanding. And El Salvador are the same. Humans work by incentives. Okay? So right now they're having a meeting with 44 central banks from all around the world, and most of them are developing nations. And as you say, like, it's a no-brainer for them, because what have they got to lose? That's always, America, the developed nations, they don't have to move first. They're the incumbents. They'll be the last to move. The beauty about Bitcoin is I don't have to wait until the Irish Central Bank says, yeah, no, Bitcoin is legal tender in Ireland, and you know, whatever rulings they put around it, I can move now. I can decide, well, I'm going to just be sovereign, a sovereign individual, and try and protect my own family's wealth. And I can move right now and start to accumulate Bitcoin. I don't need to wait 3 years or 6 years or 10 years until the Irish Central Bank actually do the work on Bitcoin and come to the conclusion that this is an amazing reserve asset, you know, an amazing collateral. So I can move first, and that's what's happening in El Salvador, that these central banks are just coming to meet with El Salvador to see what they've done. And inevitably, even if they don't write up laws tomorrow, which they probably won't, but they're going to start their journey. And just like I've had a journey and you've had a journey, and we're also on our journey, well, maybe their journey starts tomorrow or starts today, or maybe it started a year ago and just helping their understanding. But yeah, it's definitely net positive, and we can see the interest. And you know, it took 13 years for one country to go on a Bitcoin standard, and then it took 8 months for a second one. So let's see what it takes for a third and a fourth and a fifth. And you know, they say these things happen gradually and then suddenly, and we're definitely only at the gradually stage.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's going to be interesting times ahead, and I think with adoption and the network growing, it's only going one way. That's all. More people are just going to get into the network. More people are going to start learning about it, using it, playing around with it. And I think the hardest thing with everybody is really setting up your account, maybe on Binance or crypto.com or wherever you're going to purchase your Bitcoin, and buying that first, those few first Satoshis, whether you buy the 20 euros worth of Satoshis or 50 euros or whatever you buy, you know, and getting the feeling for it and seeing how easy it is to do, you know. So that being said, okay, what do you think of the future, okay, and the price prediction of Bitcoin, say in 3 years' time, by 2025, and then in 2030, and why do you think it's going to grow to whatever you think, or go down to whatever you think? So we'll start off at 2025.
The way I sort of see it is, or understand it, is very simply, it's like Bitcoin is a money that's programmed to go up in value over time. Grand. Will humans choose to own a money that goes up in value over time? Yes, they will. Because euros are programmed to go down in value over time. Okay? Now, Bitcoin can knock on your door a few times and be like, Dinny, look at me, I'm tenner. And I'm like, nah, feck off, I'm too busy, don't understand it. And then it goes away. And then it's like, Dinny, look at me, I'm 1,000, all your mates are using it. And I'm like, feck off now, I don't understand it. And then it's like, Dinny, I'm 4 grand now, look at me. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to look at this fecking thing, because it just keeps going up. All right? Now, maybe some people haven't the time that I have, and the door needs to be knocked on 4 times or 5 times. But eventually, every human on the planet, when Bitcoin's like, look at me, I'm 1 million now. You've been looking at me since I was 30 quid. No, I'm all right. Look at me, I'm 3 million. You know what? You're like, feck it anyway. I'm gonna have to look at this thing. So that's why I see Bitcoin growing. How quickly, it's really difficult to understand, because you know, the world ate the food pyramid for 50 years, and that was clearly absolute shite that a human can consume.
Food pyramid,
You don't feed a human a diet like that if you want to make them fat and sick, okay? But for 50 years, people followed the mainstream advice and ate 9 portions of processed carbohydrates a day and thought it was going to stop heart attacks. And they demonized eggs, an egg being the healthiest, nutritious item of food that exists on our planet. So for 50 years, we didn't think for ourselves, and we fed ourselves with shit. And all you have to do is look down at your belly and see if you're a victim of that. You know, and if you can see the belly there, well, that's what happens when you eat that way. It destroys a human. And we're all guilty of it, myself included. So in one sense, I'm like, well, humans have to figure this out quickly. But then in another sense, I've seen instances where absolute common sense went out the window for decades. However, with Bitcoin, the beauty is that the education has grown. And it's pretty simple. all right? And I'll just use the Dinny science again. I've got my flashy blue car and the doors go up in the air and I go around thinking I'm the great plonker, okay? But my neighbours see that, or my friends see that, and I go, Jesus, Dinny's right, lad. And I'll openly say, lads, all I do is I save in Bitcoin, okay? And anyone can do that, and they can ignore that, but some of them won't. Some of them have taken that advice, and they're now saving in Bitcoin. And in 2025, we'll have the next halving cycle, and some of them are going to see their wealth explode, 10x probably, and maybe they'll be driving around with silly cars. And then you have more people seeing them, because it's like, what did you do? It's not like Dinny drives that sports car because he's a brain surgeon, and then you're like, oh, well, I can't do that. Fair play to him. It's like, all the Egypt done was he bought a bit of Bitcoin. Sure, anyone can do that. Like he's been telling us for the last 4 years, just dollar cost average into Bitcoin. It's pretty simple stuff. He's not doing something I can't do. All right. And now you just pull that bubble out and watch that in the whole world. That's happening. That you're just seeing people who have adopted a Bitcoin standard are more sovereign and wealthier and have more of their time. And people who are ignorant to it are poorer than they were because the fiat system is stealing their wealth. And the solution is so simple. Adopt a partial Bitcoin standard and dollar cost average into some Bitcoin and learn how to custody it safely. So I think that happened. So what is my price? I'm beating around the bush because I don't want to give you a price. But one, I don't know. In 2025, I don't see why we can't be trading at 300 grand in 2025. My price prediction for 2030, I have two numbers. One of them is 500 grand, okay? And the other one's 10 million. They're somewhere in that range. That if we just go really slowly, well, Bitcoin will be worth 500,000. If we go fast, well, Bitcoin will be worth 10 million. If we go somewhere in the middle, well, maybe it's only trading at around 1 million or whatever. But they're my sort of numbers for 2025. And irrespective of that, it's more important, or it's more, rather than the actual number, all I need to know is, will my Bitcoin be worth more in the future than it is today? And with conviction, I believe, yes, wholeheartedly, yes. How much? Will it be worth 100 times more or only 10 times more? I'm not that sure. But all I need to know is I need an ability to save, okay? Store my value and an ability to save. So all I want is my money that I save to still be there in 10 years. And if it's worth more, happy days. And if it's worth 10 times more, amazing. And if it's worth 100 times more, I'm a genius. Good lad me, But in reality, all I need to know is this is my store of value. This is my savings technology. And it is a long-term savings technology. And because 99% of the world needs it and only 1% understands it, there's a high likelihood that everything I save today will be worth a lot more than the price that I paid for today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing's for sure anyway, if you save your money in fiat currency, like euro and sterling and dollars, it's not going to be worth the same value in 10 years' time.
No, that's guaranteed.
That's guaranteed, so that's it. So you've got two choices, you can keep on doing what you're doing, or you can learn a little bit and understand this a little bit more, and just, as Dinny says, DCA, dollar cost average, whatever you want every week or every month, or whenever you want, So, that was amazing talking to you today. What I'd like to do as well is, can you tell us about the upcoming events that you're going to be having in Ireland and what it's all about and when it's on?
We have our event next week in Green Isle Hotel, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Tickets are available on Eventbrite. There's 3 speakers. I'm one of them. You'll have to listen to me again. And we've got 2 other great speakers. I think we've about 130 people already registered, so it's going to be an amazing networking event. Good chance to meet people in the Bitcoin community, people who are just starting and people who have been here for a long time, and just trying to build a community, because in Ireland, the talking heads are ignorant to it, and they're keeping Irish people poor, which is unfortunate, because with Bitcoin, you don't have to go and get all your life savings and buy Bitcoin, okay? But you should get a portion of it, even 1% or 5%, and put it into Bitcoin. Because if you lose 1% of your life savings, it doesn't affect the quality of your life whatsoever, okay? But by having 1% of your life savings in Bitcoin, it could actually protect you from the other 99%, which is guaranteed to lose money. So yeah, just learn about Bitcoin. I think both myself and yourself, Lawrence, are sort of passionate about telling people and trying to communicate. Dip your toe in, get off zero, buy a little bit of Bitcoin, and start learning about it. And don't, like, Bitcoin isn't someone's going to trade your Bitcoin for you. Bitcoin isn't give me your money and I'm going to get you the Bitcoin. Okay, so be careful of all that stuff. There's a lot of scams in this space. This is you buying Bitcoin with your money, you managing some of your own money. So, and that's sort of the crypto with Dinny message, and everything that we stand for and teach is to teach people to take a little bit of responsibility for their money, because it's made by design to seem too complicated that I have to give it away to a financial advisor, or give it to my pension, or give it to some scammer who's going to trade it for me, or some great opportunity. And like, all I hear in my work is sub stories or disaster stories of this all the time. And I'm just like, no, crypto with Dinny, we're going to teach you how to manage a little bit of your money. Okay. And I believe anyone can do that.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, just keep it simple, isn't it? Keep it simple. Use the KISS methodology, as I say to people in business as well. Keep it simple, stupid, or keep it super simple, as other people say. You know? Yeah. Okay, so we'll see you all there. I'll be there on Wednesday the 25th as well. We're going to the event. And it's going to be an amazing event. And I think it's going to be actually one of the biggest events for Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin in Ireland. You know, it could be nearly 200 people going to it. And I think that's going to be maybe a landmark event, you know, for so many people coming to one spot, one location to learn about Bitcoin and to network as well and to hear other people's stories. And that's what it's all about. Yeah. So, Dinny, thanks for your time. And before we go, anything else you want to chime out with?
Thanks for getting me on. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. If anyone wants to follow me, you'll find me on cryptowithdinny.com for our workshops and any of the consulting that we do, and all the social medias, Crypto with Dinny.
Perfect. Over and out. See you
Thanks,
later.
Aaron.
Bye. 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 Bye.